For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself. Hi, my name is Tonima. Google Doodle pays tribute to Japanese inventor Seiichi Miyake. His invention, the dingy block, changed the way the visually impaired interact with the world. When Seiichi Miyake found out a close friend was losing the ability to see clearly, he wanted to help. That desire led to an entirely new way for the visually impaired to navigate big cities, railways and parks. In 1965, Miyake invented the tactile paving slab or dingy block in Japan with his own money. Monday's Google Doodle celebrates the introduction of the block 52 years ago. The dingy blocks were first installed in the Japanese city of Okayama on March 18, 1967, next to a school for the blind. And they would go on to revolutionize the way the visually impaired interact with the world, making it safer and easier to get around public spaces independently. Miyake's original design, which was installed in all Japan railway platforms in the 1970s and rapidly found its way to cities across the globe, featured two tactile patterns that people with visual impairments can detect with a cane or through their feet, providing cues on which way they should head. One pattern features a series of raised lines that indicate forward. The second design is commonly referred to as the truncated domes pattern, a series of small bumps that act as a stop sign, typically at the edge of a train platform or before a motorway. A number of different patterns have been designed since, with smaller raised dots or more pill-shaped bumps signifying different directional cues. For instance, when the raised lines are horizontal in the direction of travel, that might mean look out for steps ahead. All of those cues, which many may not even notice as they wander through a city, are incredibly important for those with limited vision. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here. Hi, my name is Tonima. How Seiichi Miyake's tactile blocks changed cities. Miyake made cities more accessible and easier to navigate. Many in the US might be unfamiliar with the honoree of today's Google Doodle, Japanese inventor Seiichi Miyake. But whether you live in San Francisco or New York, Miyake has shaped the streets that we walk on. That's because Miyake invented the tactile squares installed near the edge of subway platforms and street crosswalks. Originally called dingy blocks and sometimes referred to as braille blocks, the bright yellow tiles have bumps that help visually impaired people navigate potentially dangerous public spaces. The change in surface can be sensed with a walking cane or through footwear, letting users know they are close to train platforms or traffic. Miyake designed the blocks with two types of patterns: bumps and bars. While the bumps signal caution or for people to stop, the raised lines provide directional cues for pedestrians to travel safely. Miyake was inspired to design the system after a friend's vision became impaired in 1965, and the first blocks were installed in the Japanese city of Okayama on March 18, 1967, next to a school for the blind. By the late 1970s, the blocks were in almost all of Japan's railway platforms before eventually spreading abroad. Miyake died in 1982, but his invention continues to improve accessibility and mobility for the visually impaired in cities around the world. Today, a number of different patterns have been developed for the blocks, all with directional cues that make it easier for people to navigate urban spaces independently. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here. My name is Tonima. Who is Seiichi Miyake? What to know about the dingy block inventor? The inventor featured in Monday's Google Doodle may not immediately ring a bell, but your feet likely know his invention. Seiichi Miyake is the inventor of the tactile, or dingy blocks, which are used in public spaces like sidewalks and train and subway platforms to help those with visual impairments. According to the Doodle, Miyake had a visually impaired friend, who was beginning to struggle to get around. Miyake used his own money to create the dingy blocks, which typically feature either dots or bars similar to the tops of Legos, to alert his friend to what lay ahead. The raised dots on the dingy block signify approaching danger, such as at the edge of a sidewalk. Raised bars are used as a directional tool, and let the user know they are still on a safe path. Miyake invented the dingy blocks in 1965, and they were first introduced on a street near the Okayama School for the Blind in Okayama City, Japan, on March 18, 1967. They were quickly implemented across Japan and were made mandatory in the country's train stations. Other countries, such as the US and Canada, followed suit in the single "90s." Dingy blocks, also known as braille blocks, can be felt through the user's shoes. Those who use a cane can also fill the raised dots and bars that way, or guide dogs can be trained to read them. While dingy blocks are perhaps best recognized in their signature yellow color, the blocks can be found in other colors as well. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here. Hi, my name is Tonima. The Google Doodle honoring Seiichi Miyake will make you think about what's under your feet. The latest brightly colorful Google Doodle might make you appreciate what's beneath your feet for a change. The latest way Google has enlivened the search pages by giving props to the globally influential Japanese inventor Seiichi Miyake, a man who changed mobility as we know it when he made the world a more accessible place by creating tactile pavement. The late innovator created the canary yellow so-called braille blocks, or dingy blocks, to line the roads with cleverly designed slabs that benefit people on the street who are blind or have visual impairments. The raised bumps, which you can feel through your shoes or with a walking cane, were a language of their own. The textured design usually maps out as follows: a straight bar helps direct people toward safe zones, while elevated domes warn that there's treacherous traffic to avoid. The project was personal for Miyake. It all began when he started working on the design out of pocket to simplify getting around for his friend who was losing his sight back in the '60s, Google's Doodle blog tells us. And to make maneuvering around public spaces better for everybody, the first tactile pavement popped up in 1965 in Japan, and then in 1967 near the Okayama School for the Blind in Okayama City. Tokyo and Osaka followed suit in subsequent years as Japan really ran with the modification, even going so far as to require the train stations to roll it out on platforms. But it wasn't until the '90s that it cracked the US, Canada, and the UK. Seiichi's innovation is so ubiquitous today that you might have traversed along a Miyake innovation today without knowing it. In the UK, different bright colours can help people who have some sight, like Miyake's pal. And in Scotland, they use corduroy tactile paving to tell pedestrians of potential dangers or when they're reaching a ramp. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here. Hi, my name is Tonima. How Seiichi Miyake's bumpy tiles impacted railway platforms and streets around the world. Most people probably don't give a second thought to the yellow, bumpy tiles near the edge of subway platforms and urban crosswalks. But for the visually impaired, they can mean the difference between life and death. The person who dreamed up those tactile squares? Seiichi Miyake, whose invention is recognized today on Google's homepage. Here's what you need to know about Miyake and how his invention ended up in public spaces around the world. Miyake's tactile blocks are often found at the edge of railway platforms. The tactile blocks, originally called dingy blocks, help visually impaired people navigate public spaces by letting them know when they are approaching danger. The blocks have bumps that can be felt with a walking cane or through shoes. The colored tiles are often found at the edges of railway platforms or crosswalks. The blocks have two main patterns: dots and bars. The dots signal danger, while the bars provide directional cues that indicate a pedestrian is on a safe path. How did Miyake come up with the idea? Miyake, a Japanese inventor, invented the system of blocks after learning a friend's vision was becoming impaired. They were first introduced on a street near the Okayama School for the Blind in Okayama, Japan on March 18, 1967. A decade later, the blocks spread to all Japanese railways. The rest of the planet soon followed suit. Miyake died in 1982, but his invention lives on almost 4 decades later, making the world a little safer. Thank you for watching. For the follow-up, subscribe to the channel yourself here.